also like to hear a little bit before we go into those breakout groups and have some conversations from our fearless leader, Alyssa Briggs, the interim director of the NeoSTEM ecosystem. Alyssa, we heard a little bit last time about Wired. I know I'm kind of excited to hear more about it. What's going on?
So we've got a really nice little update. Wired, for those of you guys that didn't hear about it a couple months ago, was an idea that we came up with, some of our NeoSTEM colleagues. And the idea was that students, and we heard it on a Zoom call, much like this, maybe a little less lumpy than this call has been, but we heard a principal of a Cleveland school say that her students were not attending class because so many of them had to go out and get jobs to help support their families. Literally an hour later, I was on another Zoom call where the director of a community development corporation in Old Brooklyn was talking about how so many of the businesses in their neighborhood were really in trouble because they had no online presence. They had no website, they had no Google page, they had no Facebook page, they had nothing. So we kind of a few of us put our heads together and found a little bit of money to hire students to coach these businesses. And we did it as a very small pilot. I think there were 8 or 9 students involved in it. And I was blown away by the students' experiences with this and with the business experiences with this. Students told us that this was the first time that anyone had asked them to teach them how to do anything, and it was really a confidence booster. And then some marketing professionals joined in. The head of digital marketing for Goodyear Tire and Rubber and 3 others from the region volunteered to coach the students and the businesses. So it was a really cool NeoSTEM initiative. And so a couple of foundations have heard about it, and they have one foundation right now has provided a $15,000 for us to do a second pilot of it. And Eric Gordon is so excited about it. He's asked us if we can concentrate on CMSD. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. We've got time. We're not going to launch this second pilot until late February. And I just wanted to throw it out there. If anybody's interested in kind of joining that little work group with us, shoot me an email or put something in the chat. And I'll be sure to bring you into the little planning team that we've got going for it. But we thought that those 2 little updates were, something important to share. And then what we're hoping to do, and Jeremy can explain more about this, for the rest of our time together today, is to really begin diving into some conversations that we started a while ago about what should NeoSTEM be? What should we be doing? Who do we want to be serving? What are we? Who are we? And also to give you guys time to talk with each other and network with each other more. So I'll shut up now, Jeremy.
So I'd like to just mention a couple of things before we switch into those groups. The first is, like Alyssa just alluded to, a huge part of ecosystems, particularly for those of you who are new, is the interconnected. It is less about the ability for the organization to do something and more about, I'm Jeremy, I'm part of the ecosystem. I know I need a partner who's really great at outdoor events. And outdoor programming. And I've met Emily from Girl Scouts, and now I know I can reach out to her, maybe partner, if not partner, at least pick her brain and learn from her. Unfortunately, in this work, this is a terrible time to be rebooting NeoSTEM from that perspective because we can't see each other. So we want to make sure to offer opportunities to have you in smaller groups to have some conversations so you can start to make those connections. We also are going to, as Alyssa mentioned, the questions are guided around helping us reimagine NeoSTEM, which is a long-term goal. But I think they all also really apply to these 2 short-term goals of Wired and Remake Learning. So as you're talking about the questions that I'm going to give you, I'd like you to think both about what should NeoSTEM be long-term, And also, how do these thoughts, these questions that we're asking, play into the appropriate content, the appropriate partnerships and relationships to make both Remake Learning and Wired a success? So in just a second, we're going to break you into some randomized groups. If you are able to turn your camera on, I'd really appreciate it. You don't have to do it this second, but when you get into those groups, it just makes it a lot easier to have those conversations. And the first question that we're going to have you discuss, and then we'll come back, is this. What are the biggest unmet needs for students in our region related to STEM education? There are a lot. We've talked about a lot. But in your mind, in your experience with your organization, what are you seeing as the biggest needs that the students in our region have under that very broad STEM umbrella? That's job pipeline, but that's also thinking and creative skills. That's computer science and engineering, but also all the things. What are the biggest holes? So we're going to drop into those groups. We're just going to be in those groups for maybe 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll come back. I am going to do that weird thing where I stare uncomfortably until 1 or 2 of you talk about what you talked about in your groups. So we'll see you back here in about 5 or 6 minutes. So I can see some notes in our shared doc that Alyssa, I think, must have been taking, or Tim. But so the question that you guys just discussed, what is the biggest unmet needs? What do you see from the perspective, your perspective and the perspective of your organizations, as the biggest needs that we have in this region? Who is interested, before I randomly start calling on you, on talking about what you discussed in your breakout group? Here comes the random button.
I'm going to go ahead and just speak up, Jeremy, because I was, probably going to be on the hook anyway. So we talked about access in particular. Despite school's best efforts, we still have real issues with access and getting kids where we need them to be and at the right point. And some of that is actually hitting, the right teachers or the parents and a way to do that too. So even if they're connected, getting to the right people. And then coaching, having you lose some of those aspects. I think the things that a lot of us were working towards, which is having kind of mentors and coaches and stuff, we're all kind of isolated now. And so we've lost some of that ability too.
Absolutely. And I think most of you know this, but for those of you who don't, Cleveland is one of the worst cities in the country when it comes to access for students of poverty. It's not the thing we want to be number one in, but we're real close. So that's definitely a major concern. What else? What else was discussed in your groups other than that access? Christine, you look like you want to say something to me. Yeah.
Talking to me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. The thing that I brought up was for CAL, for the Center for Arts Inspired Learning, we don't do a lot of straight STEM stuff. We're more STEAM oriented. So for us, finding that combination of science brain and art brain that can teach both of those things can be difficult.
Absolutely. And it's a problem, I'm sure you know, nationally. When we say STEM in our world, we mean arts, because you can't have that creative aspect of problem solving without it. But a lot of organizations, since that letter's not in there, it's not a focus. Absolutely. What about one more? I'm taking notes, guys, and there are prizes available if there are not prizes. Alex, what about Alex from MyCom?
I had a feeling. I don't know why. I just thought it might come my way. We talked about access as well, so I didn't have a lot to add to the conversations already had around that. What also Kirsten brought up was students don't see themselves, especially in the districts that we serve in, MyCom, mostly City of Cleveland and the six of the entering suburban communities. Students don't see themselves represented in STEM fields. So that remains a huge, the conversation we've been having as a network is how we make STEM seem like something that is for everyone and not just for experts and not just for people who are sort of up on a pedestal.
Yeah, I talk a lot when I work with schools that my oldest sister is in marketing, my brother is a firefighter, and my little sister scuba dives with sharks at the aquarium, right? And all three of them use aspects of STEM in their daily lives. These aren't STEM jobs. None of the three are STEM jobs, but they all have to use those problem-solving skills, those iterative design skills to both find solutions and to be successful in their careers. All right, perfect. All right, another one. So we're going to go back out. This is elevator pitch time. Probably you're going to be in a group with some organization that you don't know. There's a really solid chance, and even if you know the organization, there's a really solid chance that you don't know everything that they do. So as we go into this next group, you should be with brand new people. Angie, can you do the refresh thing so we've got brand new groups? What would you like others to know about your organization and what you have to offer? What's your elevator pitch? What do people not know about the programming you have available or the resources you have available that you wish everyone knew? So we'll see you back here again in about 5 minutes. What did we learn? So again, if you want to jump in, or I will randomly call on you, nobody likes it. Be a friend. What did you either have to share that you think nobody knew, or both? What did you learn that's available that you didn't know about?
Well, I'll start off.
All right.
I'm Ruth Ray, Warrensville City School District, and I've worked with Ohio Extension in prior years, but I was not aware of the Founding Consumer Science component that they offer. So Imani was gracious enough to do his elevator pitch, and I'll be emailing him soon.
Awesome, Imani. I appreciate that. That's exciting. What else? What else is new? What did you learn or share?
I had never heard of the Ohio Invention League, so I was interested to hear about them. That's a new one for me.
That's a great one. You're gonna love working with the Invention League. Robin, did I see you on mute for a second? I'm gonna say I did.
Yeah, so I was in with Christine and Danielle. So, and Danielle we're located pretty close to each other. So Ohio Invention League covers the whole state. I just happen to be here in Cleveland, and I live in Lorain County. So real close to the Elyria Public Library. And I've been, heard of the Center for Arts Inspired Learning before. So it was fun to hear about the programs and what they're doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Robin. I'm not sure if you know this because Alyssa and Angie don't know this, but we are going to send everybody a Google form sometime really soon, today or tomorrow, that has these questions. If you wouldn't mind taking a second and writing down in that form, since everybody's not sharing, what you talked about, what you shared, what you learned as we discuss these questions, that'll help us kind of synthesize all of this new information and get that back out to you so that if you weren't in a group with somebody, you can still hear about the things that they heard about. All right, so we have one last question before we come back and close for the day. And this is Alyssa wrote these questions. And Alyssa, I feel like this next question is like 6 months of therapy, not 5 minutes in a NeoSTEM meeting. So I'm going to narrow it a tiny bit. The question is, what keeps you up at night? My list is very long right now for what keeps me up at night. So I'm going to narrow it a little bit. What keeps you up at night specific to the youth in our region? What is your concern? What is your worry about their futures, about their tomorrows? So if you could take just, again, 5 minutes with, in theory, a brand new group here and meet them, learn a little bit about them, and then talk a little bit about what is stressing you out, what is keeping you up at night for the youth in our area, specific to, to STEM ideally, but if you've got something inside you need to share, that's okay. And we'll be back here in 5 minutes to debrief, close out, and talk about our next steps. See you in about 5. So last question. You can't talk for an hour and a half. You get 10 seconds. What is it that's keeping you up at night? What are the fears? What are the concerns that we have about our local youth, particularly when it comes to STEM, but not necessarily exclusively, that we need to be thinking about and seeing if there's a way that NeoSTEM can come together and address? Who haven't not bothered yet? Amani, we heard about you, but not from you.
Yeah, not from me. All right, since you called me, I guess this isn't super related to STEM, but
okay.
I will speak for the rest of the women in the group appropriately. And we talked about like the way that the situation we're in, like the virtual aspect of learning is impacting caregivers, but like particularly women in a way that we haven't probably, at least specifically, ever seen before. So someone in our group spoke about how their like school administration was speaking to her. This is insane. When they were talking about her kid, like going to school from home, and she was working from home 3 days a week. So they're like, oh, you'll be at home. You can just help your kid do all their schooling. And she's like, I'm going to be working. And just kind of the unfair expectation that are put on caregivers, like particularly on women right now. And then we also spoke about, and again, this isn't super STEM related, but looking at school as a whole, and this does apply to like STEM reading, especially like teaching to the test, and that we kind of need an overall like academic overhaul, because the fact that we're forced like pigeonholing teachers into teaching for these very few questions that these kids are going to be asked so they can pass their third grade reading test or the 8th grade like reading and science or reading and math tests and all that. And it's clearly not working for the kids. It's not working for the teachers. Like long-term, it's not working for the schools either. So yeah, and that's a big, broad, long-term goal. But yeah, those are two of the main things we spoke about.
So Alyssa, two things come to mind for me as potentials based on what Amani's saying. The first being, I don't know about those of you who are educators, but my wife and I get calls from our very smart, educated friends on a regular basis because they don't understand third grade math and how to teach it or whatever the topic is. And I wonder if possibly there's an opportunity for some parent outreach to support parents in supporting and teaching their kids. I also think, based on the other thing Amani was just mentioning, I'm not sure how many of you are aware of this, but there's for the first time in my career, which is, I know I look like I'm 11, but it's like a 21, 22-year career in Northeast Ohio. There is a bipartisan movement for different reasons to eliminate state testing in Ohio. It is I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the state of Ohio at the state level and the local level combined spend $300 million a year on the Ohio Achievement Assessment. It's a lot of money. And even people who are pro test data are starting to say, yes, I like this test data, but I don't $300 million like this test data. So I also wonder if there's potentially, a position paper or letter in support of that work. What about one more before we close out? Who else hasn't talked and wants to before I make Emily talk? Nobody? Shouldn't have said that. So Emily.
Yeah, I was in Amani's group. And so I think that the other thing that I had mentioned, I think that schools were something that we could count on. And I know personally for me, thinking about sending my kid to school, like that's a given thing. She would be there. She would be safe all day. But that has changed in our society. And now kids are going to learning pods. They might not be able to connect. Families, like it's just changed our whole social fabric in a way that I don't think anyone could have imagined just a few months ago. So, and it just has implications, obviously, from equity issues as well. So,
absolutely. Well, listen, I think that the things that have been brought up in these little quick debriefs, but also more importantly, perhaps the things that we hope will collect from you when we send out that little survey, I think are things that can guide potentially programming and remake learning, potentially targets or partners in Wired, and for sure the primary focus of the next year or 2 years or whatever the plan is of the next version, the next iteration of NeoSTEM. I know I really appreciate you all coming out. This might not be your favorite format. I like it like this. I would rather be having, all these little conversations. So we'll get some feedback on that as well. Alyssa, do you have anything before we close out?
No, just that we'll be in touch really soon. I'm wondering if anybody has we do have a couple of minutes. Can we take one or two questions or comments, general, for the, Becky's got something, right? Oh no, you were just waving. Yeah.
Yes, I just had a question. So this is
Sorry,
my,
I was saying I have to go. Hi, everybody.
yeah. So this is my first meeting here, and I'm very much new to this forum. And I would like to, I understood a bit that this is a kind of a parents educator group, like who help to develop the STEM education for the youth in our region. Is that I'm understanding it correctly, or like I'm missing out, or I'm not understanding it here?
So
Please.
what NeoSTEM has historically done, and NeoSTEM is one of 89 ecosystems operating worldwide. What we've historically done is work to connect formal and informal educators, higher ed, with business and industry, with philanthropy, with government, you know, and hopefully we get a big, huge cross section of all sorts of partners working together for some shared common goals. NeoSTEM at the moment is in a bit of a reset, and that's what you're seeing. That's why these questions that we're asking, that we spent some time talking about, we're in the process of a reset on NeoSTEM and kind of identifying where this organization can be the most helpful going forward. And so that was the goal of much of the conversation today. But I'm happy to connect with you, you know, offline if you want to shoot me. You've got my email, I imagine, if you signed up. Yeah, I'd happy to talk to you more.
Naman, I just that's a worthwhile conversation to have. That if you don't know, the NeoSTEM ecosystem is part of a global initiative of 89 and growing other ecosystems around the world that bring together funders and foundations, business and industry, K-12, higher ed, out of school time, faith-based organizations, all of those people to try to work together to pool resources to solve the issues in the local region.
Excellent, great, thank you very much.
Any other last questions for Tim or Alyssa before we roll? All right, seeing none, you will get that survey information. I'm sure Alyssa will also include her and Tim's email addresses so you can contact them directly. Do we have a date yet for the next meeting, or is that not scheduled yet?
Yep, they are the first Tuesday of every month at 4 p.m. So I don't know what that is.
Me either.
Next month. It is
the third.
It's the third. It's the third.
Election day. It's election day.
I don't know how we can forget that one this year.
Of course it is. Well, we'll be with friends, right, that day. So it'll be a good thing to keep it, I think.
We might need it.
Yeah, we might all need it. Exactly.
The next meeting is a virtual happy hour.
Good idea. Good idea. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, I hope that I know that might pull some people away, but the day that it is, but I hope that we see most of you. If we don't, we'll be back to celebrate my birthday, December 3rd, a day early. And we will keep you apprised of all these things. You'll hear from Alyssa. And after we get that information from all of you, we can synthesize that and get it back out to all of you so that you can know the other things that are happening, the other partners in your region that you might want to reach out to. So with that, if Alyssa and Tim don't have anything else, it doesn't look like it. I thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next month.